Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the Motivational Millennial podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Our guest today is Mary Hemphill, who is a transformational leader in the education sphere. And Blake, you went to high school with her, right?
That's right. We are both graduates of Hickory High School, go Red Tornadoes. And knowing Mary and watching her career for a number of years, I have no doubt that one day she will be the Secretary of Education for the United States of America.
Yes. So we have a great interview coming up. Stay tuned for the after show when Blake and I will talk about our biggest takeaways.
Let's go. Hello, welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Blake Brandis.
And I'm Ivy LeClaire.
Our motivational millennial guest today is Dr. Mary Hemphill. Mary is a dynamic, transformative leader and community builder in the K-12 education sphere, and is the co-author of the book Educational Leaders in a Multicultural Society. Currently the principal at I. Ellis Johnson Elementary School in North Carolina, Mary also runs The Scholar Vlogger, a social media and social movement project dedicated to cultivating mold makers through inspiration, education, and motivation. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Blake and Ivy, for having me. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you being here. So, Mary, we'd love to hear more about the work you're doing right now and why you're so passionate about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, I am a principal, and it is absolutely my joy to be able to lead and to transform schools. I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be able to work with students and to be able to work with teachers. And I believe just as having the opportunity to be a teacher, I realized that I could make such a bigger impact for so many more students if we had dynamic, innovative, creative thinkers leading those classrooms that could think outside the crayon box. So it's my joy, it's my passion. I love getting in there and working with those students every day. Every day is different and wonderful. And I think one of my teachers asked me the other day, she said, how do you do it? How do you deal with the challenges and how do you deal with the politics of it all? And I said, that's the fun of it. It's figuring out and trying to figure out how we're going to seek those solutions, because every day kids come to us with so much baggage and we have to figure out how they can learn in spite of it. So it is truly my joy to work in schools, and especially in the K-12 sector, where public education right now is forefront in politics, it's forefront in the media. So I'm happy to help with the revolution of trying to figure out how we can do public education right in the midst of the 21st century.
I love that. And what does that look like for you, doing public education right? Because it is so critical right now.
It truly is, and that's the thing. There is no right way. There's no formula. I tell my teachers all the time, if there was one program that could teach all children how to read or all children how to do math, we would literally be out of business. So education, it's a people business. It's about little people and big people, and it's about the figuring it out. So there is no right way. There's no right way to do it in an urban environment or a suburban environment or a rural environment, or how do you do it in New York versus the way that you do it in California. My teachers and I right now, we're looking to Finland because they have the best educational system in the world. Public education is one of those arenas that has not been revolutionized in a very long time. We've done business differently. We've done nonprofits. We're looking at healthcare and how we can do that differently. But it's time to do public education differently. Our kids are changing. We do not sit in straight rows anymore. We do not have the teacher at the front of the class lecturing. I love when I can walk into a classroom and it takes me a few moments to find the teacher, because she is engaged in the learning process as well. So that is trying to figure out, how do we do this right? And every year you have a different cornucopia of kids walking through the door, and they mix and they change. So I don't know if there's a way to do it right, but I think there's a way to do it differently, and I'm happy to seek out those opportunities.
I love that. And I think it's so powerful too, because you have a great way of working with individuals. As you said, there are each cohort of, I love you said big people and little people, they're different, But one thing I've been so impressed by in your career in the education field is your consistent ability to build a team and to build a community. And I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about that, because clearly everybody is so different and the schools you've worked in have been very different, but you've always created this really strong culture. And can you talk a little bit about how you do that?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to my experience. After I graduated from Meredith College, I returned back to Southwest Elementary School, and I taught in the same third grade classroom that I sat in as a third grader. And my third grade teacher, Miss Melvin, she retired after 39 years. And she said, first of all, my husband does not want me to bring 39 years of materials back to our home because we have no place to store it. So it is yours. But the most powerful experience for me was to be a 22-year-old first-year teacher and have my former classmates walk in and enroll their third graders in my classroom. So when you have to sit across from your former classmates and tell them why Johnny, may be having some deficits here or maybe having some trouble here, or celebrate with your colleagues at 22 and talk to them about sight words and multiplication tables, that's alarming, because you realize that the generational gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So I realized that I needed to make some changes happen quickly, because even though I could tell my kids, I sat where you sat, the whole dynamic, the whole community looked different. What separated me from my counterparts, the teachers who have been teaching 20 and 30 years, was it wasn't us versus them, it was we. Because this is my community. These are my colleagues. These are my children. I wanted them to have some of the same experiences I had. So that is what really fuels me when I go into schools that are turnaround or schools that are in need of transformation. It's really about rolling up your sleeves and getting in to do the work. But it's also about when you have a PTA meeting, all the educational leads and the alphabet soup that we use and the IEPs and the 504s, parents do not want to hear that. They want to hear, from August to May, how is Johnny or Susie going to be a better person? And so, yes, it is about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's also about reasoning. It's about how is this person going to contribute to society? I'm preparing kids for jobs that do not exist yet. So let's talk about Genius Hour. Let's bring a program that Google is using to say, let's work 80% of the time and play 20% of the time, and let's put it in schools. Let's let our kids experience horseback riding who have never been to an equestrian center. Let's have golf pros come into our building and teach them how to swing. So yes, they do need to know how to multiply. They do need to know how to read, but they also need to know how to do life right. And that's the message that I give to my parents, because again, I'm talking to 21-year-olds who may or may not have had those experiences, and I'm offering that to them as well. Schools are very much used for erudition, but we also need to look at schools as community centers as well. So when I go into a school, I'm like, how can we make every person who is connected to this child better and not just raise our scores? Because raising our scores does not mean a hill of beans to a mom and a dad who are just trying to make sure that their child has a better life than they did.
Wow. So this community building and transformational education, that's an amazing value, an amazing passion. Do you have a defining moment or some time in your life that really, said, this is really what I love, this is my passion, and this is going to be my purpose?
Absolutely. I think it was the moment, it was my first year teaching, and I was teaching third grade, and I was getting my students prepared for the big writing test. And so I had gotten a collection of prompts together that I thought were I'm going to get the best writing out of them, and I'm going to really get to know their personalities. And I gave them 2 weeks to work on this writing prompt. And the particular writing prompt that we had for that quarter was write about something that you would find under your bed or in your bedroom. And so I couldn't wait, because I was going to have them do public speaking. We had been practicing eye contact. It was the best laid plan. Well, the day that the assignment was due, I had a little boy come into my class, and he was absolutely in tears, like getting off the bus. He was in tears. And I thought, he's just nervous. We're going to talk him through this. I was like, class, let's give him a hand. He can do this. And he asked if I would step outside the classroom so he could talk to me. We get in the hallway. And he tells me, he says, Miss Hemphill, I couldn't do the writing assignment and I didn't know how to tell you because I don't have a bed. I actually sleep on the floor in the living room. And in my mind, it was my middle class upbringing. It was my middle class thinking that had put this great lesson plan together and had not even taken the time to think about the circumstances with which this child had been struggling for 2 weeks to say, this is my reality, and I don't know how to put my reality into words. And it was then that, one, I found my love for Title I schools, and I knew right then that I wanted to lead the schools where it would force teachers to think differently about how we have experienced life and how our kids have experienced life. And then two, I wanted to make sure that teachers would think outside of themselves every time they sat down to do that lesson plan. Because just because I grew up in a 2-parent home and had dinner every night, some of our kids are coming to us and they are the parents in their homes. They haven't eaten for days, but we want them to pass a spelling test. That is not the first thing on their minds. So I wanted to shift the conversation. I really wanted to encourage and inspire teachers to think about what they do differently. But I also wanted to make sure that no child was ever put in that situation again, so that they were ashamed of their reality. And so instead, let's turn it around and let's make their reality amazing, and let's give them something so that the next generation that they're responsible for doesn't have to deal with that.
Wow. That's incredibly powerful. So something you said in there really struck me, and I'm just curious, what are some of the ways that you help the teachers that you work with to develop that sense of empathy or that consciousness to the other experiences and other realities that some of these children are facing?
One of the best things that I've done is I have my teachers ride the buses in the afternoon. When a lot of times at the beginning of the year, we just get on the bus and we just start riding those afternoon routes. And it is amazing the conversations that happen when the teachers get back to the school to see where these students are dropped off and what types of circumstances they're dealing with after 3:30. And when you have a visual of that, and it is so much more powerful to connect that visual with the learning that happens after the bell rings. Because if you can understand that dynamic, and not all of it is bad. In fact, some of it's very surprising because you do have students from affluent homes right next to students who may live, in conditions that aren't as favorable. But that's also a powerful opportunity to think about a child whose fight or flight is their main course of action versus a child who is privileged. But I have told teachers, especially this year, I said, we just need to start having the conversation. I think we shy away and say the word gang and we whisper it. Or if we start talking about ethnicity and we say, well, he's African American. And I'm like, it's okay. That's what they identify as. We can say it. It's 2016. But making sure that the learning environment is conducive to those conversations is critical. Making sure that my teachers have classrooms where the kids are okay making mistakes, because a lot of times when kids grow up in poverty, mistakes are connotated with something negative and something bad. But mistakes and discovery and learning go hand in hand. So I ask teachers all the time, is your classroom a place where students feel safe to make a mistake? Because from that mistake can come the greatest lessons. But so riding the bus in the afternoon, having that visual, and I a lot of times too will have graduates from the school come back and say, Miss Johnson, I know I got in trouble a lot. I know I got sent to the principal's office a lot in your classroom, but I'm in JROTC now. I'm going on into the Army. I've got an AB honor roll. So it's about not forgetting that you are seriously impacting the trajectory of someone's life. And a child is going to remember the negative things that you say before they remember the positive. So every interaction is an opportunity to steer that child towards success. And we do that a lot. We have a lot of good conversations. Wow.
I mean, I'm just so inspired by how much you're empowering your teachers, to feel that compassion and open up space for vulnerability for themselves, to be vulnerable and compassionate and open with these children, but also to create that space and really that understanding of how much they're truly, impacting students is a huge deal. And it's an amazing opportunity that can be really scary, but it seems like you're doing it in this way that's empowering and exciting and very passionate. And that's just very beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I love that. So speaking of some challenges along the way, what is a big challenge that you've faced in your journey and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest challenge is walking into a room, as maybe not so much as a teacher, but as I moved up assistant principal and principal, walking into a room where the years of experience outweighed my entire age. You start to get some looks and there's some conversations that have to happen, but I do put it out there in the very beginning that this is not about us. And I say a lot, I can read, you can read. I can do math and you can do math. Now let's work together so that the children leaving the school today can also do the same thing. The generational gap and the conversations that we have from baby boomers to Generation Xers to millennials, if we can get through all of that and just find our commonalities, we can work together. Veteran teachers have so much experience when it comes to classroom management, talking to parents, understanding how true learning happens through the course of the year. And then you have the amazing recent graduates that have all the technology knowledge in the world, Prezi, Animoto, how do we do the best technology, best research-based strategies that have just come out. If we can marry those two and not get hung up on, well, she's been doing this for 30 years and I can't believe she's doing worksheets, or what could she possibly know? She graduated last month. If we can marry the two and get those veteran teachers to know that technology is their friend, and then get that beginning teacher to say, okay, help me with this difficult student, help me with this difficult parent. If we can meet in the middle, that I believe is where we're going to really move schools forward. And I love that I'm in a very unique age group to where I can see where the veteran teachers, I can see where they're coming from, but I also love that energy that I get from those beginning teachers. So I stand in the gap and I'm just hands reached out with both sides and I'm saying, let's come together and make this work so that those beginning teachers are those 30-year teachers in a few years.
Mm.
You said you said that you came in and you felt that you were this new teacher, and so that was one of the challenges. How did you overcome that and come together with people who had more years on you, and what were the steps? What did that look like?
And unfortunately, public education is still in a place where you have to prove yourself. So having that data under my belt and really being able to think on my feet and to say from the very moment that I walked into the room, I don't know everything, but if I don't know, I promise you I'm going to help us find an answer. I believe that just because of where I was at in my career at the time, I was 29 when I got my first school. So just knowing that, or having them understand that I knew I didn't know everything, but I was willing to give them 150% of my time, of my energy, and then find the resources that they needed, that started to help the barriers crumble. And then when I was rolling up my sleeves and getting on the carpet with the kindergartners to play blocks and have conversations with them, when I was going into classroom STEAM labs and saying, okay, guys, let's do this science experiment together, it was a beautiful thing because the teachers also, it's not you standing up in front of the classroom and just having this lecture with students and then going home in the afternoons. This is very much about building relationships. So after I modeled that with the students, I was able to model that with the teachers and pull up to a professional learning community with the teachers and said, y'all, I noticed that the scores were kind of dipping here. Let us figure out how to do it, not what are you going to do about it. So very much teamwork, very much a lot of modeling and collaboration, and that really helped me break through those barriers in the beginning.
Yeah. We'd love to know what advice that you have for other millennials, who are pursuing their journeys or just trying to find their passion and maybe trying to overcome some challenges as well.
Okay. I talk a lot on the Scholar Vlogger about what it means to be a mold maker. And I consider myself a mold maker a lot of times. I think after my first open house, when I got my first principalship, And I had several parents come up to me and say, you cannot possibly be the principal because you look like you're in high school. I realized that we might need to redefine what a principal can be, what a principal can represent, what a principal can be interested in. I count it a joy to be able to have worked in elementary and worked in high school, but also to know what was on the Billboard Top 100, to know who Miley Cyrus and Lil Wayne were. Because if I don't, then you render yourself sort of irrelevant at that point. But what I would say to other mold makers is that shattering molds and defining, your field, or defining what it's going to be like to leading your field as a millennial, there's no definition for it. You cannot look in Webster and say, these characteristics have to happen for you to be successful. But great ideas and people who make history rarely follow the rules. They rarely follow the rules. And I think we're in a great time right now in public education, in healthcare, in the private sector, where we can bend the rules and we can make a whole new definition of what successful looks like. Because wouldn't we want to encourage our youth to do the same thing? They're going to be voting very soon. They are going to be leading organizations very soon. And if we continue to do things the way they've always been done, that's a form of insanity. So let's do it differently. Let's not be afraid, and let's shatter the molds.
I love that. In your practice, is there a piece of conventional wisdom or some area where you've looked at it and said, okay, I get why, theoretically we're supposed to do this, but here's how we're going to do it differently? Is there something you can think of from your experience like that?
Definitely observations. And, even as a student, I would always wonder, why is the principal coming in and sitting down for an hour and staring at us? What is that? What am I supposed to be doing during that time? And why is my teacher so chipper when that happens? So I started to think about observations when I became a principal, and particularly now in the role that I'm in, because transformation happens when you're aware of what you're doing great, but the things that you need to work on are the opportunities for improvement. Where do I give you feedback, and where do I give you that push that's going to make you better in that area? So instead of thinking of observations as me looking at you through a fishbowl, let me just climb into the aquarium and be a part of what's going on during the learning. So I told my teachers, you're going to see me, and you're going to see me often. Sometimes it's going to be in a formal setting. Sometimes it's going to be in an informal setting. But I promise you, before I leave that room, that there will be feedback waiting for you via email, via a Post-it note, or via, us just having a conversation, so that you never have to guess what it is that I'm thinking. I went to my superintendent and I said, I know we have to do 30 observations a year, but I'm going to challenge myself to give very personalized feedback to my teachers. I'm going to give them what I saw. I'm going to always give them one tip to get better. And I'm always going to give them one resource that when I come back the next time, I want to see it. So far, my team has done 157 of these differentialized feedback forms and all these different things. And our scores so far have increased 27% from where they were in August to where they are in our last benchmark last week. Wow. And I truly believe it's because I'm not just sitting there giving them a narrative of what they see every day, but I'm giving them the tools to get better at the things that I know specifically that they need to improve upon. Because if you're a great hitter, I don't need to tell you, keep on hitting, you're doing great. I need to say, you need to run faster after you swing to get to first base or whatnot or what have you. Mm-hmm. So if we hone in on those things that are specific, instead of just following the form that everybody else does, I feel like we could get better. And we have. And I'm so proud of my teachers. So proud of them.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing. Speaking about some of that motivation, we'd like to shift a little bit and talk about what gets you motivated, since clearly you are such a motivational force at the school. What do you do on your ideal morning to ensure that you are going to have a great day?
Okay. And there's a video I did on the Scholar Vlogger about this very thing. The first thing I don't do is I do not turn on the news. I think, if you turn on the news in the morning, that's just going to be a Debbie Downer for you. So I do take time to meditate every morning. And I do take time, of course, to just thank the Lord that I'm awake and that I'm able to go back and fulfill my purpose and fulfill my passion. But I visit my 2016 goals every morning. And I say them to myself. I just remind myself every morning of what it is I'm setting out to do this year. I don't make resolutions, but I say, what steps did I take yesterday to achieve the goals that I want to achieve for this year? And I think by having that visual, I don't know, I do a vision board every year as well, and I look at that as a visual reminder. But I think by reminding myself every morning of what my overall goals are, it really helps me to visualize my day and to focus on my day in terms of interactions that I have, in terms of phone calls that I make, in terms of getting on social media and connecting with different people who are going to help me achieve those goals. And I promise myself every morning, I'm going to give something or I'm going to bless someone every day this year. It can be a piece of advice. It can be a ride to the store, but I'm going to give more this year than I receive. And I have found that I feel so much more fulfilled when I do that versus what is it that I can bring in to myself.
Yeah. I have a quick follow-up question about your vision boards. And I'm a big fan of them myself, but I've heard of some pretty amazing stories of things on vision boards manifesting in surprising ways. So I was just wondering if you have a story of something awesome that showed up on a vision board that you had created.
Awesome. Okay, so one year I put a picture of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House, on my vision board. And in my mind, I just thought, I know why I'm putting this on my board, because one of my goals is to become Secretary of Ed for the United States. But I ended up going to an amazing professional development with the Smithsonian that summer for the district that I was working at. And at that workshop, the right hand to the Secretary of Education at the time, Arnie Duncan, did a presentation, and she talked about this initiative called Teach to Lead. So in my mind, you could have had Ryan Gosling in there, Idris Elba, and I would not have cared. I was like, I need to meet her. I'm so excited. So I grabbed my notebook and my business cards, and I run up to her after the meeting, and we connected, and she actually works in the Department of Education for the United States. And we have connected, and just her conversation, just her mentorship has just brought me one step closer to realizing my dream. And so I truly believe that after I affixed that picture of the White House on that board, it was just destiny that I met her. And I'm going to continue my relationship with her and continue to strive toward getting to the White House.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Congratulations. I have goosebumps from that story. That's amazing.
That's great. I know it's funny whenever I tell anyone about Dr. Mary Hemphill, I always also say future Secretary of Education of the United States of America.
We're holding that vision for you as well.
Thank you.
One other question just about things that motivate you. Do you have a motivational quote or a phrase or perhaps a book that you would like to share?
Mm-hmm. In my first PhD class that I walked into, I had an amazing professor who ended up being my advisor on my dissertation committee. And he started the class by saying, you have to create your own reality. And he started talking about the idea that the 9 to 5, the 40-hour work week, I'm going to do the same job for 30 years, that is some people's reality. But if you want to create your own reality, it starts with taking that step outside of the norm. And I don't know, that has always stuck with me, that my reality is exactly what I make it. My reality happens when I connect with people who pour into me and I pour into them. My reality happens when students bring me issues or they bring me celebrations, and I say, how can I make this happen for more students? How can I make these discoveries happen for more teachers? So create your own reality has kind of become my mantra. I'm very excited to come from a small town like Hickory, North Carolina, and to know that I can create my own reality is very powerful. And it's just one of those quotes that continuously on a very daily basis inspires me.
That's incredibly powerful. And I think it's true that you become the example of that reality that you're describing too. And you model that And even just in terms of how you lead your own vision with the Scholar Vlogger, I just feel like it's a great example of saying, I wanted to do things differently. And the results have been phenomenal. And I think that's the great thing. And it's not without risk and it's not without frustration. But I know anyone who's been on an entrepreneurial journey or even just a personal journey of discovery can really relate to that. And that you have more power than you might think. And that's something I think we try to remind ourselves all the time, is that we're in a really fortunate position to have some of the resources and the connections and the education to be able to really move the needle in important ways for people in their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So in closing, we'd love for you to take a moment to share where people can find you and your work. Obviously, we mentioned the Scholar Vlogger, and if you want to take a moment to talk a little bit more about that, it's phenomenal content.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the Scholar Vlogger is a social media project I started around the idea of being a mold maker, because there are so many people that I have come in contact with that are shattering the status quo. So I wanted to create a space where on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, as well as my blog, where we could come together and be inspired by one another, where we could educate ourselves, and not just formal education in terms of having degrees and letters behind your name, but just adding tools to your toolbox, and also to motivate one another in this space, because like you said, it can get challenging and it can get frustrating. So to know that there are other mold makers out there is very powerful. So my blog is www.thescholarvlogger.com, and on that blog you can access my YouTube channel. I post videos that inspire, that educate, that bring mold makers together, and I talk about this life of what does being a scholar look like in the 21st century, and how do we motivate one another. You can find me on Twitter, on Snapchat, and on Instagram at ScholarVlogger.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mary.
Thank
you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
Very cool conversation. One of the things I really loved that Mary hit on was this image of having the teachers and her experience of riding the bus. And I just love that as a metaphor for going to where people are and seeing their reality and experiencing what their daily life is like, what they're going through. And I think that has so many applications in business, obviously, for your customers. You know, what are their pain points is something you'll hear a lot. But more importantly, I think, what is their reality like? How busy are they? How much are they able to focus? And that's the same thing with everyone we encounter. For me, I think the equivalent of riding the bus that really transformed my life was when I had the opportunity to study Arabic and youth music culture in Morocco when I was in college. And one of the powerful learnings that came away from that was this idea of being a minority, which, you know, as a white male growing up in the South, I hadn't had a lot of experience of visibly being a minority on a daily basis until I was living in Morocco. And then it really made me recognize the emotional energy that is spent with that constant awareness that you are different from all the people around you, or most of the people around you. And it certainly made me have a lot more empathy and, I think, understanding, not that I understand what the full experience of living someone's entire life like that is like, but certainly more of an understanding of what that feels like on a daily emotional basis to a certain degree. And so I think the other piece that came out of that, and the reason that empathy is so important in communication and in our daily lives, is that when we're judging people, we're not listening to them. And it can be hard to truly understand and connect with people who we feel are different from us in some ways if we don't take that time to ride the bus, metaphorically, to where they're living and their daily existence, their emotional state, and get in it with them and say, okay, this is what life is like for you. Now, how can I help? So that, for me, was a really powerful image and really resonant.
Yeah, I really love that. I mean, there are several advantages to that kind of understanding and what you're talking about. Compassion, being one of them. Gratitude for what is going on in your own life. And also, on the flip side, really an understanding, I mean, of what's possible for you in your own life. Because I think about when we're starting on our own journey for our career, or even throughout that path, if we stay open to understanding other people's perspectives, understanding different cultures, understanding people from different industries, people that we're working with in different industries, and their perspectives, we might actually end up discovering and finding a perspective of life that opens us up in a way that we couldn't have expected before. And, find opportunities for collaboration or find a new, little side venture or side quest to bring out my nerdiness, but, on this journey. And so really getting to understand different people's perspectives can make our world just grow infinitely.
Yeah, there's real power in that curiosity and the willingness to say, I don't know everything about this person or this industry or this project or this problem. And I think when we can approach it with that sense of humility and that curiosity, it does open these avenues to innovation, collaboration, and personal discovery. So I really resonate with that a lot.
Yeah, and it ties in too with the point that I really appreciated that she talked about. And, it was so great listening to Mary too, because she just really embodies so much of what a great leader is. It's amazing. You always see online, or I always see online, these different memes or videos about the difference between a boss and a leader, And there were so many bits of wisdom all around leadership that she shared. And one of them is about giving more than you receive. And I loved that she talked about taking time to talk to somebody, even if it's just a minute or two, like she might be feeling busy or that sort of thing. And that ties back to what you're saying, which is essentially that we don't necessarily know where that person is coming from, but being willing to provide the space and to listen and have the compassion to be available to other people, you could really learn a lot in that experience. And then, when we think about giving more than we receive, but things happen in our lives because we put forth something out into the universe. For example, if we're working on a creative project and we are too afraid to start, we don't provide ourselves with any kind of opportunity to gain feedback or anything else so that we can get the ball rolling. Just by putting a few blog posts out and starting, you start getting feedback, you start understanding what you're capable of, you get all of these messages. And so there's something about really knowing that by giving, you're not losing anything. You're just adding more to others around you and to yourself and providing more abundance in your life. It's kind of contrary, but it's really true.
So true. And we really appreciate the abundance that you, our awesome listeners, bring into our lives. Thank you so much for listening to the Motivational Millennial podcast. You can find us at motivationalmillennial.com. Also, we're on Facebook, so hit us up there. Please feel free to drop us a line. Let us know your thoughts, any questions you have. And we look forward to talking with you again soon. Peace. For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!